Knew I'd missed something there. I forgot to click my microphone and camera on. There we go. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm Jack Chew. This is Chewing It Over on Friday. What's the date today? 18th of the 6th. Now, we'll keep saying that Friday shows are different, the atmosphere is different and stuff. I think that some of you tune in on Fridays more often than on the live show, and so we get a bit more interaction. But I particularly think that there's something about the topics that seem to come up on Fridays that are particularly novel as well. And this week has been such an interesting, diverse set of topics that we've kind of covered on the show. We had Monday's reflections on Therapy Live. Wednesday, we're talking a little bit about sort of gender ratios at MSK events. Yesterday, I had a really clinical topic where we expanded on the rugby and contact shoulder with Ian Horsley. And today, we're talking more sort of governance of the physiotherapy profession, more specifically by talking about the CSP's council picks on today's show. So thanks for joining me. Really looking forward to getting stuck into this with you, and I'm really keen to hear some of your thoughts on it. But looking at it, unfortunately, I knew there'd be something. The chat function doesn't seem to be working very well, so I'm probably going to need to just check myself to make sure that things are working and live. I'll try if I can to stay across the media to try and make sure that I capture any of your comments and questions that come in, because it's not seeming like it's bringing them to me on the feed, which is a shame. That's been riddled. Intermittently had that problem the last couple of weeks, which we're working on, which is a shame. But I do hope we can still try and find a way to make this as interactive as possible. As you might have heard, so that the context and the circumstances around this is that the CSP's council can go back, I think, a couple of years now. I forget exactly when, but the CSP's council for years has been a sort of set of different people with different constituents, shall we say, whereby you've had sort of members that represent assistants, members that represent students, members that represent Northern Ireland-based physios, members that represent, say, independent and private practice, and all sorts of different sort of stakeholder group leads that then are going into council. And then there was a constitutional revamp, I think a couple of years ago, but I might be mistaken there. You know, if it was 3 or 4, I won't be surprised, and I'm sorry, I'm just not remembering exactly. But they then restructured it in such a way that then you had a more distributed set of elected representatives that are for the profession, right? So you're then asking the membership to try and bring that level of diversity by way of just vote. So you're kind of in a situation where you may well not have someone that is from, say, Northern Ireland, and you're just trying to get people that are then going to appropriately represent the profession at large, because you're not delineating by those special interest groups, shall we say, which is a risk. And it was presented to the membership as a constitutional amendment, of which I supported. So I thought that on balance, that was actually a positive move and would help us to stop some of the bureaucratic gridlock that was being observed by me and others, including those at the CSP and those on council sometimes, that would maybe stop some of the progressive changes and reforms that were being indicated for, in some people's opinion. Now, there was some opposition to it, but as a general rule, it went through. And then we've had, this is our second sort of wave of nominations then into that new formed structure and format of council. And so this is it's a bit of an interesting one as well, because you've got a set of brilliant candidates, you know, some of which I know really well, some of which I'm getting to know in recent times, and then some of which I still don't know well, but I've read through all of the statements and know of them now, and I've looked into them a little bit. And so I can just rest assured that there's some cracking options. You know, there's definitely, I say, no need for any apathy, and I would discourage members of the CSP to make the mistake of, I hope they don't make the mistake of then dismissing this opportunity to try and place some brilliant people onto council. And the fact that people, anyone that gives their time up and commits to joining and trying to do this often in their own time, and especially the role, is one that will no doubt draw on their time as well as their expertise in such a way, I think is something that should be applauded, and therefore you should engage with that process as best you can. Now, there's a few reasons as to why the CSP's voting system is admittedly a little antiquated, and it's frustrating that it still needs to go through a process of what feels like quite dated paper balloting and things like that. And so you get your pack through with your statements in black and white and all that sort of stuff. And I get that sort of feels frustrating for some. However, that is somewhat constitutional, and also part of what makes it a credible process means it ends up having to jump through those hoops, and it's a shame. But I think that that's one of the excuses that we need to try and puncture when it comes to trying to make sure that the membership vote percentage is higher than usual. One of the criticisms, and including one that I've leveled at the CSP, is that you then end up in a situation where your participation rate and your engagement from your membership is low. And these are the sorts of reasons that people often mention as to why they don't participate. And they're not going anywhere in a rush, really, because you do compromise some credibility and quality of the actual process of voting if you then made it, granted, more accessible, more multimedia. Doesn't mean we shouldn't go there in the future, but in this moment now, you fill out your paper and you send it off, and I encourage you to do so regardless of your candidates, right? It's the classic sort of make sure you do your democratic duty type moment here for me to say. Obviously, I'm bothered about who it is you then voting for, and I'm going to then state my claim on who I'm supporting. And also in the shows for the next 2 weeks, we're going to have some of those candidates on. Hopefully all of those candidates. I don't know if I've got a final booking for all of the people I'm about to talk about, but they are going to be on the show in the coming weeks and talking a little bit about what they're proposing. Key questions from me are going to be that what is their broad analysis of the profession at large? What do they see as being things that they think that should be changed, and what do they feel their role could be in it, and that sort of stuff, right? So it's going to be exciting to have them on the show and to get stuck into the detail of their sort of policy slate or plank or whatever you call it, that is outlined to some degree in their statements, but obviously the word limits and all that sort of gubbins that comes into something like this, they'll be able to expand their arguments, and obviously as he's chewing it over, we can agree and disagree, and I can play devil's advocate on some of their points. It's going to be really fun to have them on the show, especially because they're some of my favorite thinkers in the game, and I can't therefore believe that they are then putting themselves forward, and the benefit that would have for the profession at large. So as I said, unfortunately, the annoying thing about this today is I really wanted an interactive show, but the chat function isn't working properly, which is annoying. Therefore, if possible, I'm just gonna take a moment to try and flick through to make sure that I'm not getting people saying your microphone's not working and stuff like that. So although I can't see it as quickly as I'd like, if you are hearing me loud and clear and things are working okay, then where possible, just please do let me know through whatever channel you are listening. It would be really valuable. Stop me stumbling my words a little bit in this moment, because I just need to make sure that it is functioning at least. So do shout up if you're getting me, or if you're not. Obviously you can't hear me, but just I'm sure at this point I'd have heard from some of you if it wasn't working at all. Let's have a look. Yeah, it's just annoying. This is I'm not getting the usual feedback from the system. But anyway, I'm gonna crack on as if we are. Thank you, Kim Young. I just happened to check Facebook and she said loud and clear. So I'm hoping that means it's working. But yeah, sorry I can't draw the comments on and stuff like that as I normally would. But anyway, here we go. Uma backing. That's one of the key things, and I will go through each of them individually. I certainly won't be unpacking exactly why, because I'm going to have them on the show, which is going to be great in the coming weeks. But it's ranked choice voting, and so this can be added to, of course, but if persuaded. But generally speaking, I've thought long and hard about this, and especially because of the many hats that I wear, particularly the MSKR hat, which is where obviously we have a think tank that operates a non-profit that operates as a think tank born out of a grassroots movement to try and provoke change in MSK practice. That is often how the lens of which I see this. And so whilst I am also thinking, how good will these be for the wider profession, your neuro-respiratory, your workforce planning, your big picture education issues, I'm bothered about all of that too, of course, because I try and be thoughtful about this stuff and thorough with my analysis. But admittedly as well, some of what is colouring my decision is the fact that some of these people that have put themselves forward are exactly what I think are the perfect personnel, both in character disposition as well as the you know, some of them I disagree with on some things, but just the way in which they think is brilliant. You know, the fact that they're putting themselves forward and fancy it is the thing that's most exciting for me. And that applies including across some of the candidates I understand, and the statements that are here, the ones that I'm not backing as well. You know, that's the thing, is that I think it's just a really decent field, which excites me and why I'm encouraging you to vote, even if you disagree with me. So without further ado, right, this is my ballot paper. I'll zoom in a second, just because fortunately for the sake of camera, it's quite nice that they're kind of clustered, just coincidentally, in terms of, I think it'll be like alphabetical order, won't it? But they happen to be clustered. Is that these are my picks. This is my top 5. Okay, so hopefully you're getting that. Apologies to Justine Croxton. It feels a bit cruel, doesn't it, to not have a number next to her name. I don't know Justine, but equally, it just coincidentally means that she's in amongst the zoom in. Hold on, let me bloody move this caption. That's not looking good, is it? That's here we go. I'm not dealing with the tech very well. Right, so in this order as to the ranked choice voting. Okay, you've got Emma Busby, Leanne Antoine, Sandra Harding, Sue Julians, and Ishmael Beckford. Unbelievable that I'm able to, you know, I look at that and I do, honestly, it's cheesy, but I pinch myself, right? That any 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 of them that got picked would be huge, absolutely huge for the profession. Obviously, they're not going to move the needle all on their own. It's going to be a collaborative effort onto council, but that would be such a progressive. You know, any of those would be such a progressive move for the profession. And so, allow me to go through them. I'll pull this back up if you've missed it. I will pull this back up in a second. So that then you can have another look at that. But let me just tell you a little bit about some of these people, some of which you might have heard of, some of which you won't. But you know, if you make the mistake of caring about my opinion on this, then please know that these are people who, for this role and for many others, I would vouch for with full throat. It's pretty good. This isn't me saying here's the best of a bad bunch, right? This is why you're not getting me taking a punt. I'm not doing a full list of names just for the sake of based on their statements, right? These are people who I'll vouch for personally, and of which those that I didn't know as well until recently, I've had conversations with that give me full confidence in their abilities for this position, and as I say, many others that I would vouch for them for. But number 1 on that ticket is a lady you might not know about, not necessarily one of the biggest names in the industry, certainly someone that goes about her business more quietly than someone like me who's broadcasting all the time. But Emma Busby is a lady that I worked with in Staffordshire at Lichfield Hospital. He's a physio assistant at Band 4. Also now, from what I understand, has managerial duties beyond that in terms of her banding, but just a lady that's of incredible stature in MSK practice for me, and someone that I am so excited that she's putting herself forward for a position like this, and it would be such a huge asset to the profession if she was to be elected onto council. And it's no coincidence that she's top of the pops for me, and a surprise pick in many ways, because the next 2 ladies on my list, I've been a named signatory for them and their run, and therefore it's funny for Emma in some ways to have leapfrogged them, because I absolutely love what they're about and have vouched for them, including by signature to then get them on the ballot. But Emma Busby is someone that I consider to be, I've worked with closely over the course of a number of years, working with her in practice, as well as then someone that I consider a personal friend. That is just someone whose attention to detail, as well as her understanding of the fundamental values that you need in healthcare, and particularly her work within the NHS, and the punching above a weight that she does as a thinker, as an assistant, and the fact that she has honestly disrupted mine and many other people's perception of what should be, and how support workers would necessarily be, what is the ceiling or the upper limit of what a support worker could do for not just a service, but for the profession at large, is phenomenal. Right, the service audits of which she's presented, and the ways in which she engages is such an interesting case. So please read her statement, look into her work, and you will find yourself, if you haven't heard of her already, so surprised as to what she's managed to achieve already, but then what she could go on to achieve in positions such as this if she was elected to council. So, top of the pops for me, a lady called Emma Busby. Look her up, as well as enjoy hearing her. She'll be on Chewing It Over next Friday to unpack a little bit more about what she's done, what her analysis is on physiotherapy and the CSP at large, as well as what she plans to do and what she feels she can achieve on council. So, it gives me great pleasure to announce that is certainly someone that I will be voting for, and was so excited to write a number 1 next to her name on the ballot. The next then would be Leanne Antoine. So let me just let's see if I can, as I name them, I'll just remind you of what I'm just on about. So Leanne Antoine is someone that you should know of, because she covers this show on Tuesdays. Is it first Tuesday or second Tuesday? Sorry, I'm ruining this for her now. But second Tuesday of the month, I think it is. She's on Chewing It Over. She does a takeover. You might recognise this frame. She does the Chewing It Over takeover with Leanne Antoine. There it says second Tuesday of each month. An increasingly close colleague of mine across various different parts of what we do. And one of the main things there is that she's, like me, she's a flamboyant broadcaster who's willing to speak her mind, and certainly someone that the way in which she goes about things and the way in which she's sort of principled and articulate of what it is she feels, especially speaking to any sort of unfairness or injustice. You might recognize her from the Physio Matters podcast a couple of years ago, which is where we first met in person, where she stood up and said, look, there's some injustice going on with regards to private medical insurers and how we can stand up to be valued both in pocket and in credibility as a profession. And it's one example of several different issues of which she puts herself forward to say, this isn't okay. This is my take on the matter. I want to hear your views. So the way in which she steps up as a leader is something that makes me excited about what she can do and go on to achieve on council. And so Leanne will be, of course, joining me on Chewing It Over, as well as your ability to tune into her own shows. She also moderated some sessions at Therapy Live, just another example of how you know, I hope this long continues, but just an obvious integration into our wider network and our team is someone that just any opportunity that's been given to her from us and elsewhere, she just takes with both hands and just smashes it out of the park, you know, and just a great person and a great thinker, someone who applies a logic model that's, it's one of them where you don't need to care about whether or not your conclusions are perfectly aligned with Leanne, right? She will respect you for how you've got there and want to hear about that, as well as she will want to articulate herself as to how she got there. And the way in which she thinks is far more important than the conclusion she comes to. I'm fortunate enough to agree with many of her conclusions, of course. You know, sometimes that's not enough, is that, you know, the showing you working out is only part of it. But I think that one of the things that makes me interested in and one of the people that I vouched for and was a signatory on her application was that she I like what makes her tick, and I like the way in which she is respectful of all the different voices and is then wanting to channel a truly sort of democratic process of making sure the voices of the unheard get heard and into the mixer, even if they're inconvenient, almost especially if they're disruptive. I think it's an exciting thing as to what she could achieve and why I'm proud to be putting my numbers next to her name. Thirdly, another lady who got my signature against her application. You could say whether or not that's foolish or not, we'll see. But Sandra Harding is what I consider to be the queen of governance. And so Sandra, if you don't know of her work with PAL, and I forget the acronym that she for the company of which she now founded, which is an incredible work that Sandra has done for all of us to try to raise the important issue of clinical governance and how the infrastructure and what she and her colleague Sarah call the kitchen of a restaurant, essentially the way in which sometimes the front of house gets all the attention, but if you're not doing a good enough job and a safe procedural job in the kitchen of a restaurant, then you're definitely not going to have good and credible service out front. She applies that logic to our profession, and especially in sort of MSK service delivery. She's gone about selflessly going about trying to raise awareness over the issues that she sees that we have with regards to the light touch regulation and how that can sometimes be bypassed. The fact that to some degree we're not creating enough social accountability as a profession, and setting about creating tools and styles that can then make right that wrong is a thankless task, right? It's quite unsexy work to talk about clinical governance, and so the fact that she's doing that as a labour of love, and also off the back of an incredible career, both then clinically and operationally through BMI and other organisations, and heading up huge teams. She's absolutely bona fide credentials when it comes to leadership, and something that is just one of them. You're in a presence, and you're just like, aren't we lucky that there's the adults in the room on this conversation? You know, the attention to detail, but also the willingness to then find a way to get that messaging right is a pretty special thing and a rare thing, and one that, again, on every level of analysis would just be such a brilliant asset for the profession to have on council, and to be helping to steer decision making. Is someone that you know is going to be thorough, but is also then going to make sure that she's, again, similarity here with Emma and Leanne. It's just values driven, as all of these candidate picks are. And again, a personal vouch from me in terms of that quality. Normally, I would love to bring them in and start to get conversational. Unfortunately, the system's not serving me your comments and questions and stuff. So I'm really sorry. If you have any questions, then I will definitely come back to them. And I'll just apologies for a bit of a tech issue I'm having here, where I'm not getting served your questions as usual. But I do think and hope that you're getting still me loud and clear. Little reminder of where I'm at with it. So we've gone through Emma, Leanne, Sandra, on to Susan Julians. It says that she's got a Sunday name on there, but I know her as Sue. Don't know if she'd want me calling her Susan, but she probably had to put it on the ballot paper. It's certainly a more recent acquaintance of mine, and one whose work I've known of. She's the practice principal of her own private practice, of which she founded and runs a team of staff there, and brilliant care quality that she's delivered through various different channels of credibility that she's managed to achieve. Of course, one of the big ones is that she delivers quality care as to shown her sustainability as a business and as a practice that's reputable in her locality. But we're certainly geographically far enough apart for me to not really know of that. But I think what's interesting about Sue's story is that she's been one of those that's not wanted to just say, well, the market determines quality, right? She's been someone that's been working with Physio First on their quality assured clinics and standards and professionals can't mark in, to then say, look, we're proud of what we do and we want to be measured against something. So what's the best tool that's available for doing that? Because we care about quality. And honestly, in private practice, that is a rare thing, because there's lots of different corners of places for people to hide. And so for Sue, as a practice principal, but also as a clinician herself, to always be wanting to strive, that shows the sense of character we're talking about there as a clinician. Then as a leader, she's shown herself then to grow that business and to distribute those responsibilities, to bring people through, to delegate tasks, but also to lead sensibly, to bring on that next generation. She's really passionate about how we can get those next phases through, and also certainly a brilliant voice for private practice that's not going to be sort of narrow and too insularly focused. She's shown herself to be really bothered about things, very vocal recently about the way in which we can integrate and bridge the gap between NHS and private practice. She's been vocal about the fact that she wants people to aspire to the AP roadmap from NHS England and Health Education England. Those are the sorts of comments that you won't hear from many, right? She's thinking about those bigger picture variables and bringing them in, and not therefore narrowly seeing just her corner of any industry or her corner of any profession. She's someone that does have that. She knows when to zoom in, she knows when to zoom out, and so another person that I'm so delighted to be vouching for, and certainly someone I keep forgetting to mention exactly when they're going to be on the show, but I'll put the list up. But I think she's on next Wednesday, coming on Chewing It Over. You'll know her she was on the show on Wednesday, interestingly, with Evie Martin, but also she's been on, I think, a couple of times before that as well. And you guys have really enjoyed her take on various matters. And so please do have a look up of those episodes to see what it is that Sue's take is on various different industry-related issues, because I think her analysis is insightful, but also she doesn't stop there. She's of a character disposition as well as a skill set that can help drive towards action. It's not just all talk. She's going to then be able to walk the walk, which is pretty cool. And finally, number 5 is Ishmael Beckford, another recent acquaintance. I was introduced to him more recently by Nick Downing from the APPN, an organisation who I'm really impressed with, especially since COVID, but also I've been a member of for a number of years. So Nick introduced me to Ishmael because he works with him. I know of Ish's work as the co-opted member of council from the BAME network, as well as though I know of him from supporting a piece of work from my colleague Farouk Bello, who brought together a set of voices to talk a little bit about the phenomenon we obviously experienced in, around, and after George Floyd's death, to try and bring BAME physios together to talk a little bit about our corner of that that conversation in MSK and in physiotherapy in terms of the statistical disparities that can occur within that. And so Ishmael's been a proud voice in that space, and also has then put his money where his mouth is and got stuck in and got co-opted onto council, but doesn't actually have a voting stake in that because he's a co-opted member. And so it just seems an obvious next step. So I've had a couple of conversations with him off air where obviously I wanted to know a little bit more about the man, but also in terms of what his clinical take is on things, or more broad operational things, because as is absolutely no fault of his or no fault of anyone's, is that naturally, because the conversation has been Ishmael's take on all things sort of BAME representation, sometimes there's not an opportunity for him to explain a little bit about his own story. So we will get him on the show very soon to try and unpack a little bit about that, unpack his career journey. Incredibly accomplished bloke who's gone through the ranks and is working at director level on a large company from an MSK background and coming through. It's just been really interesting behind the scenes for me to find out a little bit more about his take on some of the workforce issues and the clinical issues, and how we might drive clinical excellence, or how we might achieve value, or how society might see us better as a profession, as well as how there is no separation between those conversations and obviously what he's looking for representation-based fairness, on the level of which you might know of his opinions more obviously through BAME representation and the like. So really looking forward to obviously unpacking all of these things with the individual candidates in coming weeks. I think within the next, it might not all be next week, but like over the next 2 weeks, we're going to get all of these guys on the show, which will be really exciting for not just hearing my take on them, but also getting them to unpack what it is their ideas are, what their take is on all these things. But as I've said before, and now probably 5 or 6 times, I am incredibly. It took for me to sort of put these numbers in these boxes for me to realize that this is such an exciting moment for the profession, because the caliber, there's some great clinicians and thinkers that have been on CSP Council over time, and some of my favorites and mentors that have chaired council over the years and things like that. It's massive, really. People like Anne Green are huge inspirations to me and continue to be. I work with her on MSKR stuff, so I'm not for a second discrediting what has been before, but particularly amongst the restructure, which I mentioned at the top of the show. If you're just tuning in, have a listen back. I sort of described a little bit about how council changed in recent years. The opportunity that knocks for these people and anyone else that's on this list is huge, and then the influence that it can have, and various different transition phases that the profession's in, both with regards to integrations and making it sort of appropriate, having its place within the wider MDT and medical community as a healthcare profession, but also then physio-specific issues that we need to make sure we've got the right people representing us and right decision makers around the right table. Then it is such an exciting thing to have these guys putting themselves forward, and so any of them would be such a welcome addition. And then dare to dream, if you get several of these candidates then getting through and breaking through into council, then yeah, the ability for us to stop whinging and start acting. People like me who's a sort of commentator on this and gets involved in various different parts of it. But granted, whilst I work with the CSP on various different things and partner with them on some other stuff that we've hopefully got planned with them later in the year, there is a degree in which I completely accept that sometimes it's like, well, it's easy for you to say, Jack, what are you going to do about it? The fact that these guys are throwing their hat in the ring and getting stuck in at that level is just fantastic. And as I say, it doesn't need to be for CSP Council. If they're putting themselves forward for whatever it might be, I can trust that they've thought long and hard about what it is, what they feel they can do, how well placed they feel they are. Because if they felt that there was someone better, they'd be bringing them forward. They're the sorts of leaders they are. They'd be dragging them forward and moving them ahead of themselves. So they clearly have thought about this carefully and feel that they've got something to offer, and that's enough for me anyway. But then for me to then reflect on them as people as I know, and having spoken to them about some of these issues, and then knowing what I feel the gaps are, the shortcomings of yesteryear, as well as the opportunities that knock for physiotherapy at large, as well as that nested within, say, the MSK industry or rehabilitation-centered practice, and what we can achieve for social good of society. Yeah, I could easily not do a show like this. I could easily not be vocal about who it is I'm supporting and why I'm supporting this, telling you to vote regardless of who it is. I could easily just not do that, or I could I could come on there and do a sort of Russell Brand, what's the point in voting style thing, if you remember that from a few years ago. And there's a reason I'm not doing it. It's because it's just not an opinion I hold compared to this one, which is you should go out and vote. You should certainly back some of the candidates that you like, but also I hope I've been able to sort of turn your eyes to the people I've just mentioned. And so once more, before I wrap up, is Emma Busby, Leanne Antoine, Sandra Harding, Sue Julians, and Ishmael Beckford are my picks for CSP Council, and I'm very excited to announce that today, and to announce that they will be on the show later on in the next week and the week after. So they're going to come on and be able to unpack their slate, their take on various different matters, and it's going to be an absolute pleasure to chat with them, some of which have been on the show before, but then others that will be able to explain a little bit about what they're planning to achieve. So again, apologies from me for the fact that normally this would be a much more interactive show and we'd bring on some of the questions and comments and things like that. So I'm really sorry for those that have commented elsewhere. I haven't been able to do that because it's not serving me that feed. I have been told that the sound's coming through fine, and it's not that. It's just not telling me what you guys are saying. So we do have opportunity in the coming weeks to definitely get you more involved in it. So that's just unfortunately, this has been more of just me blurting stuff out rather than it being as engaging as we hope it to be normally. That's just a tech fail from me. I'm quite used to them this week. But in the meantime, I hope that's great. I hope you are happy enough with, I hope it's broadcasted enough for you to see the picks that I've put forward. I'll be back next Monday for more chewing it over. In the meantime, have a brilliant weekend, and I look forward to getting stuck into this and all other matters that touch the MSK industry and beyond in the coming weeks with you. It's always a pleasure. I'll see you soon.